Ever find yourself like curled up with a good book, lights are low, maybe it's even after bedtime and you're thinking, is this bad for my eyes?
Right.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've all been there. So that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're taking a look at Tex Colley. Really interesting piece, actually, about whether reading in dim light is really that bad for us bookworms.
Yeah, and it's funny because, like, that's something I feel like we've all heard, right? Like, don't read in the dark, you'll ruin your eyes. But what's fascinating is Tex Colley actually kind of debunks that, even quotes this, like, prominent ophthalmologist who says straight up, the idea that reading in low light harms eyesight. Total myth.
Music to my ears.
Yeah.
Seriously, I'm like a total night owl when it comes to reading, so that's good news. But then, like, where does this idea even come from? Why is it so, like, pervasive?
Well, it's all about how our eyes do their thing, right? So in dim lighting, our pupils, they open up more, let in more light, and the rod cells, those are the ones that help us see when it's not so bright, they're working overtime. All that takes more effort from, well, basically your eye muscles, and that's where that feeling of strain comes in, like you've been reading for hours.
Right, right.
But text collé, they're very clear. That tired eye feeling, it's just your eye muscles putting in the extra effort. Doesn't mean you're doing any lasting damage.
Okay, so like not vision doom, just
Yeah.
my eyes are like clocking out after a long shift. Gotcha.
Yeah.
But what about kids? Because I remember Tex Colley talked about that a bit too, right?
Yeah, totally. Because for kids, it's different. For adults, dim light reading, not a huge deal. But for kids, those eyes are still developing. And text call really stresses that consistent strain. Like if they're always reading in dim lighting, it can actually affect how their vision develops.
It makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
imagine trying to learn calligraphy, but you can barely see what you're doing.
Exactly.
Results aren't going to be great.
Yeah.
So, what does Tex Colley recommend? Like, what's the ideal reading environment for kids?
Well, they're big on bright, indirect light. Ideally daylight, of course, but they say well-placed lamps, maybe with those warmer LED bulbs, that's a close second.
Sure, sure.
The idea is their eyes aren't constantly straining so they can develop the way they should. And it's not just about how bright it is either. Tex Colley, they also talk about reading distance, like an arm's length is good, and taking breaks. Those are super important to let those eye muscles relax a bit.
It's interesting. All these other factors that honestly I don't always think about. It's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, font size, how far away am I holding the book? Those things
Yeah.
matter. Text Colley really makes you like stop and think about the whole picture.
Yeah, totally. Like for kids especially, Tex Colley even suggests books with bigger fonts,
Yeah.
less string, right? And that thing about looking up, focusing on something far away every once in a while, that can help too.
So basically what we're learning here is that reading under the covers with a flashlight, maybe not the end of the world,
Mhm.
at least for those of us who are, past our eye development stage.
Pretty much. Our eyes are actually super adaptable. But like Tex Colley reminds us, it's about more than just brightness, especially for kids. It's about setting them up for good vision for life.
So next time you're like settling in with a good book, think about it, right? Are your eyes actually bothered by the lighting? Or is it maybe some of these other things that Tex Colley talked about? Definitely something to keep in mind.
All right, let's talk about vision. I mean, who doesn't, right? We all want to keep those peepers working.
Absolutely.
Especially, when you get to that age when you can't quite read the menu without holding it out like this. Today's deep dive, we're tackling something that seems to be on your mind based on what you sent in. The causes of vision loss.
Always a good one to be mindful of.
Definitely. So we've got an excerpt here titled Texticale, and something in it really jumped out, the idea that some everyday habits could be affecting our eyesight. What do you make of that?
Well, it's really interesting how interconnected our behaviors and our health are, especially when you're talking about something as, crucial as our vision. But before we jump into that, do we know anything about this excerpt? Like what kind of text is it?
Yeah, good point. It wasn't anything super formal, like a medical journal article or anything. It seemed like more general interest, maybe from a magazine or a website.
Okay, so maybe targeted towards a broader audience then.
Yeah.
That actually makes that whole everyday habits angle even more interesting, right? Because people might not realize that things they do regularly could be playing a role, even if it's subtle.
Exactly.
Like even screen time, that's a big one these days.
Huge. Everyone's glued to a screen.
Right. And that can contribute to eye strain and potentially even affect vision in the long run.
So, all right, text to call the causes of vision loss. What are the usual suspects? What are the main culprits this excerpt is pointing to?
Well, without actually seeing the text, we can probably assume some of the classics are in there. Age-related macular degeneration. That one's a biggie.
I've heard of that.
That's where the central part of your vision, it gets blurry.
Yeah.
And then, of course, cataracts, which is that clouding of the lens.
Right.
And both of those, they become much more common as we, rack up those birthdays.
Yeah. And I will say the excerpt did mention age as a factor, but it seemed really focused on, like you said, the things we might not even think about, day to day that are kind of chipping away at our vision over time.
Exactly. And this is where preventative eye care really comes into play. Like,
Mm.
if this excerpt is honing in on lifestyle factors, things like UV protection,
Mm.
diet, even managing conditions like diabetes, those can all factor in.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, because diabetes affects blood vessels, and those are in your eyes, too.
See, this is why we do these deep dives. So, listener, what's standing out to you? Has this got you rethinking your eye care routine?
For me, what's really cool is how this excerpt, even without us knowing all of the specifics yet, it reminds us that our health, it's all connected. It's not just about like your eyes in isolation. Every choice we make throughout the day can have a ripple effect.
Such a good point. A huge thank you to our listener for sending Text Calais our way. This was a fascinating one. And listener, if you've got something you'd like us to do a deep dive on, you know where to find us.
Hey everyone, welcome back. You know how sometimes you just feel like you're stuck in a rut, just going through the motions?
Absolutely, like you're missing out on those little details that make life interesting.
Exactly. Well, get ready because today we're diving deep into some surprisingly simple yet powerful techniques for becoming more observant, more present, more aware. And the source material might surprise you.
Yeah, it's not your typical mindfulness guide. We're looking at Text Calais.
Text collé.
Yep, that's French for pasted text.
Pasted text. Okay, now I'm intrigued. What does pasting text have to do with being more observant?
Well, at first glance, it does seem a bit strange, but it really clicked for me when I started thinking about it like this. Every little detail we observe, every sight, sound, smell, it's like a fragment of text. And as we gather more of these fragments throughout our day, we can start pasting them together to create a richer, more vibrant understanding of the world around us.
So it's like taking those seemingly random observations from our daily lives and using them to piece together a bigger picture.
Exactly. And the text really dives into the core concept of comment avoir les yeux plus ouverts, how to have more open eyes.
It makes sense, open eyes to really see what's around us. But I'm guessing it's about more than just our physical sight, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's about engaging all of your senses, really tuning into your surroundings.
So how do we actually open our eyes in this way? Are there specific techniques that this text collie recommends?
There are actually. One that really stood out to me was the idea of spending a dedicated 5 minutes just observing an everyday object.
Okay, like what?
It could be anything, a
Yeah.
coffee cup, your phone, a houseplant, anything you encounter regularly. But here's the catch.
Let me guess, there's a catch.
You have to approach it as if you've never encountered this object before in your life.
Interesting. So no preconceived notions, no autopilot judgments.
None whatsoever. The idea is to really force your brain to break free from those routine ways of thinking and perceiving things, to really see the object with fresh eyes.
I can see how that would be challenging, but in a good way.
Yeah.
But how does that one exercise translate into being more observant in other areas of life?
It's all about training your brain. When you approach something with fresh eyes, you're activating different neural pathways, those pathways that might be dormant because you're so used to just glossing over things. This rewires your brain to make new connections, to see details and possibilities you might have otherwise missed.
It's like a workout, but for your observation muscles.
I like that. You're essentially strengthening those observation muscles.
So instead of just looking at my coffee cup every morning, I should really take a moment to appreciate its design, its texture, how the light reflects off of it.
Precisely. And Text Calais encourages you to apply this to your entire surroundings. Go beyond just sight. One day, focus on your sense of touch. Really feel the textures of the surfaces you interact with, the coolness of a doorknob, the softness of a fabric, the roughness of tree bark.
And I imagine the next day, maybe you focus on sounds or smells.
Exactly. By consciously shifting your attention to different senses each day, you're essentially rewiring your perception of the world.
It's like you're breaking free from sensory autopilot. Instead of just existing in your environment, you're actively engaging with it.
Right. And that heightened awareness, that ability to pick up on subtleties that most people miss, that's where things get really interesting. Because that's often where creativity and problem solving stem from.
So it's not just about becoming more observant for the sake of being observant. There's a real practical benefit to it. What would you say are some of the ways this open eyes approach can impact our listeners' lives in a tangible way?
The possibilities are endless. It can make you a better listener. You start picking up on those subtle cues in conversations that you might have missed before. It can help you become more aware of your surroundings, which can be incredibly beneficial for things like navigating a new city or staying safe in unfamiliar situations.
Like you're increasing your situational awareness on multiple levels.
Yes. And it can even help you excel at work. By being more attuned to the details, you're more likely to notice inefficiencies in your workflow or come up with innovative solutions that others overlook.
It's about being present, engaged, and receptive to those flashes of insight that often go unnoticed.
Precisely.
For our listeners who are now eager to embrace this open eyes philosophy and start sharpening their observation skills, where would you recommend they start?
I would say pick one technique from Text Collet that speaks to you. Don't try to do everything at once. Maybe it's the 5-minute object observation. Maybe it's choosing a different sense to focus on each day. Find what resonates, make it a conscious practice, and see where it leads you.
Think of it as a fun challenge for your brain.
Exactly. Because when you open your eyes to the world, you might be surprised by what you discover.
I love that. A new perspective can change everything. And that's our deep dive for today. Until next time, keep those eyes open and those minds curious. Ever get that gritty feeling in your eyes? Like after a long day staring at a screen or maybe being out on a windy day?
Oh, tell me about it.
Yeah, it's like someone swapped your eyeballs for a couple of sand dunes.
Ugh, the worst.
So we're diving deep into dry eyes today.
Which I have a feeling a lot of you can relate to.
Big time. And get this, the source material we've got is about as dry as the Sahara itself.
Really?
Yeah, just a few lines from a text called, wait for it, Text Collet.
Text Collet.
Yeah, apparently that's French for pasted text.
Okay. Not exactly giving much away, are they?
Not at all. But hey, we're up for a challenge, right?
Always.
So Text Collet it is. And one of the lines that really jumped out, well, more like whispered faintly at us was les yeux secs, which, you guessed it, means dry eyes.
Les yeux secs. Huh. It's interesting how just those two words, so simple and direct, can really evoke that uncomfortable feeling.
Totally. It's like you can practically feel the dryness just reading it.
Hmm.
And it got me thinking, does this minimalist way of describing it, just stating the fact, dry eyes, say something about how we tend to view this whole thing?
Oh, I see what you're getting at. Do we downplay the discomfort of dry eyes because it's so common, so everyday?
Exactly. And if we do, does that mean these kinds of conditions, the ones we tend to just shrug off, are they understudied?
That's a really good question, because it could be that, there are underlying causes or even connections to other things that we're just not picking up on because we don't take it seriously enough.
Right. And it makes you wonder about other conditions, maybe even more serious ones, that might be getting dismissed or misdiagnosed because they're seen as just everyday annoyances.
Absolutely. And think about how much our own perceptions and the way we talk about these things can actually influence whether we seek help, how seriously we take our own discomfort. It all plays a role.
It reminds me of this one time I was working with a team in Japan, and these guys were unbelievable. They'd be pulling these crazy hours, like marathon work sessions, and you'd never hear a peep of complaint, not a single, my eyes are so dry. It really highlighted how differently we express discomfort across cultures.
It's so true. Our cultural backgrounds definitely shape how we perceive and react to those physical sensations. And as you were saying, that can have some real implications. Because if a culture encourages stoicism, like not showing pain or discomfort, it could lead to people putting off seeking treatment for something that actually needs medical attention.
So for anyone listening out there who might be battling a case of the dry eyes, don't just write it off as a fact of life. It could be nothing serious, or it could be a sign of something else going on. Talk to your doctor, explore what might be causing it, and don't be afraid to advocate for your own comfort. You deserve to feel good, right?
That's right. Listen to your body.
All right, something to think about next time you're reaching for those eye drops.
Or closing your eyes for a few minutes. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best.
You got that right.
Hey everyone, welcome back. You know how we're always curious about what we can do to stay healthy, right?
Absolutely.
Well, today we are diving deep, no pun intended, into foods that are good for our eyes.
Love it.
And we're getting a little international inspiration today from a French source, Text Collet.
Very interesting,
Now, don't worry, we've got the translations ready for you. It's not a crash course in French.
right?
But what's cool about this source is how it views food like it's part of a whole lifestyle, you know?
Yeah, text to Calais really emphasizes the preventative aspect of food and lifestyle.
Mm.
The French really have that mindset of nourishing your body to prevent problems down the line.
Preventative lifestyle. Okay, I like that. So I got to ask, when I was reading this, there were some foods that really surprised me, like escargot, for example, for my eyes.
Well, see, that's what I love about text Calais. They highlight these foods that are really rich in zinc. It's not just escargot, they talk about oysters too.
Which honestly, I don't think about those much at all when I think about eye health.
Exactly. But zinc is super important because it helps our bodies produce melanin.
Wait, melanin, like the pigment in our skin.
That's the one. But it plays a key role in our eyes, too. It's like having built-in sunglasses
Mm.
helps protect your eyes from those harmful UV rays. And, zinc deficiency can actually be a factor in macular degeneration.
Which is like what damages the central part of your retina. Right?
Exactly. It can really impact your vision.
Wow. Okay, so zinc is crucial. Makes sense why Texcoli put so much emphasis on it. All right, well, let's talk about the all-star, the MVP of eye health foods, carrots. We've all heard it growing up, carrots are good for your eyes, but this article really breaks down the why, something about beta carotene.
You got it. Texcalate goes into how our bodies are amazing at converting beta-carotene, which carrots are full of, into vitamin A.
And vitamin A is like the eye vitamin, right?
You could say that. It's essential for good vision, especially when it starts getting dark
Yeah.
and you need to see in low light.
So it's not just an old wise tale, there's actual science behind it.
Exactly. There's a reason why it's stuck around. In fact, did you know that vitamin A deficiency can actually lead to night blindness?
New kid.
Yeah, text calling makes a big point of saying that getting these nutrients through what we eat is so important for keeping our eyes healthy as we get older.
That's fascinating. And speaking of getting those nutrients, what about blueberries? They were mentioned in Texcali too, right? Something about reducing the risk of cataracts?
Yes, and they don't just mention blueberries randomly. They specifically call out these things called anthocyanins.
Anthocyanins, that those are.
They're the antioxidants that make blueberries so vibrantly colored, and they have some amazing protective properties for our eyes.
So basically, it's these antioxidants that are doing all the hard work protecting our eyes.
Exactly. Think of them like little bodyguards, fighting off these harmful free radicals that can cause damage to our eye cells as we age.
Free radicals, those are.
They're like these unstable molecules that can damage cells and contribute to aging, including age-related vision decline.
Right, okay.
And the cool thing is that Tex Cale connects this back to the traditional French way of eating all those colorful fruits and veggies.
Hmm.
It naturally ensures you're getting a good mix of those beneficial antioxidants.
It's amazing how these food traditions often have these like hidden health benefits that we don't always think about. It sounds like it's not just about adding the good stuff, though. Texcale also mentions things to avoid if we want to keep our eyes in tip-top shape, Brown.
100%.
Yeah.
They're really into enjoying food, but they're also cautious about overdoing it on sugar and processed foods, linking those to a higher risk of eye diseases.
So it's about balance, like most things in life.
Exactly. It's about looking at your diet as a whole picture, not just individual things.
Yeah.
Tex Cale even compares taking care of our bodies to taking care of a garden.
Okay, I like that.
Just like a garden needs that balance of nutrients and care to thrive, so do our eyes.
That's a great analogy. So to keep our vision sharp, we need to be mindful of what we're feeding our eyes, literally and figuratively.
I like that. It's about making choices that support our eye health in the long run.
Absolutely. Well, this has definitely been eye-opening. I love exploring these different approaches to health and wellness.
Me too. It's fast.
Today, we've learned about the power of zinc, the importance of vitamin A, and how those amazing antioxidants, those anthocyanins play a role. And we got all that from Text Calais, which just shows how much we can learn from other cultures. So here's something to think about as we wrap things up. Given how much the French emphasize prevention and loading up on antioxidants, could adding in more foods like bell peppers to our plates be a step towards protecting our vision for years to come? Until next time.
Great question. Something to consider for sure.